I now invite James Thompson to come forward and light the chalice and lead us in our affirmation of covenant, which is in your order of service. It's that
let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to learn what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. If you please open your order of service and join me in reciting the affirmation of covenant. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine, thus through covenant with each other.
Good morning. When I found out I was preaching after this song, it changed things a little bit. My name is Rebecca Roetzel. It is a pleasure to be with you today, here as a member, but also today I'm actually here as a speaker from Camp Mitchell. Thank you for inviting me to speak. I have too many things now that I want to accomplish in these few minutes. I feel like I should try to preach a decent message, and I want to share about what's happening at camp, but I have to respond to the anthem that the choir just sang. That's too many things to tackle in one sermon, but you probably know me enough to know that I'm going to try anyway. First, I just want to share in case, have any of you been to Camp Mitchell? Yay! We got some Camp Mitchell kids over here. It's on top of Petit Jean Mountain. The Diocese of Arkansas was one of the first landowners up there on the ridge with the state park and WRI. Camp Mitchell owns about 600 acres on the east end, including Stouts Point. If you've ever been up to the state park to where Petit Jean gravesite is, that's actually camp's land. We lease it to them forever, but we have special permissions. I invite Chad to show just a couple of images of this place that has stolen my heart recently. They've been running youth camps since the 40s as Episcopal camps and a place for church retreats and vestry retreats. They shut it down in 2019 due to some poor management and just running a deficit over and over and over. Then COVID hit. But throughout all of that, there was a team called themselves the Save Camp Mitchell movement. They got together, formed a new board, asked for special permissions from the bishop to revive it and to open it with a new status as a 501c3. I'll show another one here. Okay. Or I don't have my clicker anymore. Sorry. This is our view. I never expected to be the executive director of Camp Mitchell. That was not in my plans. And when I applied for this job in March of 2022, at the urging of a woman named Margaret McClellan, who is not this Margaret McClellan, but I thought was this Margaret McClellan, which I didn't realize until Margaret McClellan logged into the job interview, and it wasn't this Margaret McClellan. Somehow the universe aligned and sent me to this space. But I was impressed by several things. The campus, this view of the Ada Valley off the south side of the ridge. You can't get this view from the state park. I was impressed by the buildings and the land. that it has a very healthy generational community of campers and staff and supporters. I grew up at a generational camp on a mountain, and this felt so familiar. I was especially drawn to their specialty camps, which they've been running for decades. Robert R. Brown, which is a camp for adults with disabilities, and their Dick Johnston Children's Camp, which is for kids with an incarcerated family member. This targets low-income and minority kids and focuses on literacy and swimming, kids who might not otherwise get that water safety. I was also taken with the new board of directors and their desire to develop more interfaith relationships and develop new partnerships, such as one with Camp Quality, which has been running in Arkansas for 30 years, but they were shopping for a new home that was more aligned with their liberal values. I think there's another, well, you can leave it. I also took note of camp's 4 pillars: spiritual development, creation care, along with radical inclusivity and Christian hospitality. So I'm morphing those last 2 together with this sermon title, Radical Hospitality. Yes, there is a book called Radical Hospitality, and the authors, Pratt and Horman, have a description of the book which reads, in short, "Deep within the heart of Benedictine spirituality lies a remedy for hatred, fear, and suspicion. Hospitality. At once deeply confronting and sharply challenging, true Benedictine hospitality requires that we welcome the stranger not only into our homes, but into our hearts. Like the hymn we sang this morning, the last line, where every door is open wide to all who choose to step inside." One of the book reviews reads, "At its most basic, hospitality means saying welcome in to a friend and a stranger alike. It means you're open to and grateful for the gift of discovering what any person has to offer, no matter who they are." It is camp's values and inclusivity, do you want to click to the next one? And hospitality, which sealed the deal for my employment there. And I have since been pushing us into a focus on accessibility. The last one. These efforts are happening in 3 main areas: financial accessibility, physical accessibility, and spiritual accessibility. These 3 areas will not come as a surprise to anyone in this room who's been involved with shaping this church. And it might also not come as a surprise that movement in these areas, especially radical movement, can feel risky and uncomfortable. It is the risk and discomfort that makes it radical. So in those 3 areas, along the lines of financial accessibility, this camp has had a vibrant scholarship program, which means that it allows no camper is turned away because of financial problems or reasons. However, launching a program this year with a pay-what-you-can model for the non-summer months for adults has been a radical idea. We call them evergreen gatherings, and they're open to all ages. It includes your meals and a program for the kids in the forest. There's service and workshop opportunities for adults. It's non-religious, and it's all donation-based. Some contribute cash because they can. Others have gifted us a variety of talents. They've contributed the meals and cooked the meals. They barter for items and services that camp needs. Painters, electricians, plumbers, and just extra handy hands. Not to mention that 100% of the camp-age kids who attended those gatherings in the spring registered for summer camp, many of them first-time campers. We've made a lot of physical improvements to our campus to increase the ADA accessibility, but inclusivity across the board in a lot of different ways. And those efforts and grants received are pushing us towards bigger, more, we're dreaming of the accessibility that we might be able to offer up there on the mountain. Spiritual accessibility can also seem radical. Though the Diocese of Arkansas has long been hospitable to the LGBTQ community, hanging a Pride Progress flag at camp was seen as radical by some. There was fear that it would offend some of their longtime financial contributors. It would abandon their more conservative camper families, and that it could make camp a target for hate. Some of those might have happened, and they are still possibilities. In the meantime, while other camps struggled to fill their summer staff positions, we had too many applicants, and about 75% of them identified as queer. We launched a Somewhere Over camp for our LGBTQ community, an all-ages retreat weekend with no agenda other than connection and respite. That was a huge success and blossomed into multiple weekends as we move into 2024. We at Camp Mitchell, just like UUs, want to create a space that is radically hospitable to all types of people, no matter where they are on their faith journey. Camp Mitchell is Episcopal. Its youth weeks include Christian formation and a closing Eucharist. That part is part of camp's identity. So creating purely nature-based programming without religious content has been a radical idea, but it has opened our gate to new people and created spiritual accessibility for others, especially those with church trauma or who no longer feel welcome at a specifically Episcopal camp due to their own current beliefs. Camp can serve as a front porch for the diocese, but with an intentional range of programming when it comes to religious content and expectations of participants, it does allow for greater spiritual accessibility to anyone who is seeking healing, wholeness, and belonging. The mission of Camp Mitchell, and all taking place in a sacred natural space. A space so much like here, where one might hear, either discovering or remembering, the divine language that speaks to their own being. I'm going to come back to that idea. But language, I was struck by the translation of the Lakota words from the choir's anthem. They are printed in your order of service. We aloie was sang over and over. It means, I am speaking to you in your own language. This became a radical thing to do for Lakota people at times throughout their history. In this lullaby, it's an important message, a source of comfort and belonging for those who hear it as their own language. I'm going to bounce back to Camp Mitchell for a minute. I mentioned our Robert R. Brown, the camp for adults with disabilities. It's been running since the 70s, and it started a camp for kids, but the kids grew up, and they didn't want to age out of camp. So instead of sending them off, they changed the camp. My first experience with Robert R. Brown was last December during a weekend camp, because summer means nothing to adults. They want to meet all year round. I noticed that we had a deaf camper and no interpreter. His mom was on staff, so she could assist, but it was difficult to practice the same level of hospitality for him as I could give to all the other campers. When Robert R. Brown summer camp rolled around, I nervously introduced myself to the whole group a little differently. I said, "Hello, my name is Rebecca. I work here. I am hearing. I am learning ASL. I am not very good at finger spelling, but I am practicing. I want to speak with any of you who are deaf or hard of hearing. I want to practice talking with you. I am happy you are here. I was not prepared for the room's reaction. I didn't realize it at the time, but in that moment, I had tapped into some radical hospitality, even in my clunky attempt just to connect. I probably signed like a 2-year-old. I was just trying to let them know that I see them, but also as a director, there's things I need to tell them. I want to say, welcome, it's time to eat breakfast. Are you okay? Do you need the nurse? Are you in pain? Or emergency, we're having a fire, emergency. More likely, emergency fire drill. It's just a drill, not an emergency. More importantly, when it comes to hospitality, I could ask them, do you want some coffee? And very important, black or with cream and sugar? We hired a sign interpreter for summer camp, and that was radical. I don't think it's ever been done before at a camp with deaf campers and deaf staff. Ahie aloie we aloieya in English translates to, I have brought you here so that I can speak to you in your own language. I am speaking to you in your own language. I've brought you here so you will recognize me. Imagine if the divine was saying that to us. I believe that there is a God, the force, something so divine, practicing such radical hospitality towards humanity that it can speak to us in our own spiritual language. Whatever language is driving you towards spiritual maturity, which feels like a lullaby to your soul and offers wholeness to your being. You heard it here, perhaps. Others find it elsewhere, and others are seeking it. I am steadily growing an appreciation for the Episcopal language and the language of their services. Like ASL, it is not just a language, it's a culture. It's very different from the church I grew up in and very different from the languages we speak here. But with Episcopalians, I can find just as much beauty and meaning. With the Lakota words, I find just as much meaning and beauty, the same way we find beauty and meaning with all the religions and faith traditions we draw from. Paul had a sermon, and he's here because he'll know I didn't do my research completely, but there's a conflict type that he mentioned. Agreeing or conceding with someone doesn't mean it's making you less you. Allowing you to be you doesn't make me less me. It's a hard thing to do in practice, especially when deep spiritual practices are involved. I am so grateful for the years that I have had as a member of this church, for belonging, but also witnessing all of this radical hospitality at work. The honesty and sincerity you have, the good intentions and humility sometimes, the never-ending drive and passion and conviction that you have to create accessibility and beloved community here and in our world. Please be proud that you have 7, 8 principles that are clearly guiding you with a shared vision. I am carrying all of that with me in the year ahead as I attempt to provide some sort of executive function to a whole community of people who are opening their hearts and minds to a whole new way of being at Camp Mitchell. Altogether, I believe, both here and at this camp, we are trying to move people towards wholeness wholeness that strengthens our community. Like the Time All Together story, it's not just enough to notice when the sun is gone. Those chicks set out to find it, even though they did not know where it lived. They knew they would lean on others along the way, and the others, except the snail, didn't just sit there, they joined in. Because when we find that the sun has forgotten how to shine, we need to show up together, gently or loudly, responding in the ways that each of us know how to give in order to bring that sun back into the sky, back to their wholeness. Because I believe that these actions create the ripples that could prevent a tragedy for one life or many. I'm here to thank you for being a welcoming faith, tradition, and house. I'm going to close with these words that we read at the new member dedication because I just feel like they so concisely represent who we are, and I've carried them with me into my Camp Mitchell work. We and the generations before us have prepared a house of freedom with open doors and open minds and open hearts. It is a house of truth-seeking, where one may seek and find meaning and value. It is a place of trust, where we covenant with each other for fellowship and common good. It is a house of friendship, guarding the dignity and worth of each person. It is a house of worship and meditation, art and music and nature, of children and adults, of action and rest. It is a prophetic house calling on ourselves and the larger community to seek justice and spiritual maturity. This house is a cradle for our dreams, the workshop of our common endeavors. I invite you to camp anytime, and I thank you for the support you've given to me. Amen.
James, will you come forward to extinguish our chalice? And please join in saying the closing words which are in your order of service. Go out into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. And now everybody can go to the Thompson Hall in the Meadow Wing and have coffee and conversation. Let's keep this going.